This week's podcast is sponsored by Sevenoaks Sound and Vision. Sevenoaks provide expert, impartial advice to their customers and have been doing so for over 45 years. You can enjoy free UK delivery on all online orders or click and collect from any of their 25 stores. Visit ssav.com to view the wide range of AV products and find your nearest store. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 11th of February, and joining me on this edition, Kaz Harlow.
Man, I'm hungry. Give me some food.
Ed Selley.
Something funkier than funky.
And Steve Withers.
That's a whacked idea.
You're so street it hurts, Steve. You really are.
Oh, brilliant. That was worth the
My
admission.
word, that's ghetto.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Ghetto lives in the English countryside and is incredibly middle class and went to a private school.
I know what you've been up to this week, Steve, so we'll come on to that later on. What have you been up to, Kaz?
Spent a lot of time with the kids. A lot of time.
He doesn't sound happy about that.
Crazy.
You are a real advert for parenthood.
I think it was fantastic up until the point that they started writing in biro on white walls.
So about 4 minutes in.
No, that was right at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all right.
We did Lego Movie 2, which was really good for them. It was fantastic. So I always love a little cinema trip. Popcorn, Coke, do the whole thing. Loved it. And I put up a massive chest of drawers in my son's room, and so they managed to make that take 4 hours longer than it needed to by hiding the screws and trying to hammer things that shouldn't be hammered.
It's
and
like a child helping you to
really
switch something over.
I organising everything into little piles, and then my son's disorganising it. And then I took my daughter swimming, we had a ball, so that was really good. She hasn't been for swimming very much, and I really love swimming, so it'd be really nice to get into that with her. But then, just as they're ready to go to bed, I'm going to write my name on my wall in my bedroom. And just left him upstairs for like 5 minutes, and then my daughter had written my son's name in his room and her name in her room.
Could have been worse. You could have written something else.
It could have been a crudely drawn cock, mate.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
You clean it off the white wall, and underneath the white paint is blue paint. So now you just got a big mark.
Sounds like someone's going to be doing some decorating quite soon.
Yeah,
nice.
Probably you can imagine how that will go with 2 kids as well. It'll be fingerprint marks everywhere, but yeah. So it was a really fun kids weekend. But you caught me post cleaning biro off wall, so that's why it sounds like.
So we saved you from that then. So you should be quite grateful, really.
Yeah.
At least you get 2 hours off. So there you go.
Hour and a half, Phil. Hour and a half.
Have you? Yeah. If it's an hour and a half, I'll give you a $5. Have you sitting them down, Kaz, and asked them why they're acting out? There's obviously a reason for it.
There's absolutely no point doing that.
They've
Can I
stuck
be very
it
clear
all
about
day
it?
Have I sat them down and asked them why they've acted out? I've tried it before, but normally they just ignore me completely.
They're just very artistic.
Yeah, maybe they are. It wasn't, and you can't reason with them at bedtime. It just gets hysterical.
Can't be for me at bedtime either, for that matter.
Or tell them off. That's the odd thing. It's like it's the worst time of day to tell them off.
I'm afraid you've got to use sanctions. I'm afraid that's the only thing that works for me is the use of sanctions.
Like the UN does?
Yeah, except I follow through on mine.
But I'm saying sanctions at bedtime at like 7 o'clock, 6:50 in the evening. Sanctions tend to mean, I'm sorry, I can't do the podcast, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to get any sleep tonight either.
Yeah,
no. I do things like we've got varying threat levels. I mean, he can be restricted in his access to his Kindle. Or he can then have his access to watching anything on the television curtailed. And then we go into the ultimate level of threat. The television stays on, but we'll watch something like the Antiques Roadshow. Or
that sounds like my worst nightmare.
The television comes off, and he can sit down and listen to Mike Oldfield's 5 Miles Out from start to finish with me, because that's pretty much the most exquisite punishment you can think of when you're a 5-year-old boy. So,
it's quite a punishment
so he
when
knows
you're a 35-year-old boy.
Exactly. He now knows dicking about bedtime is going to be a miserable day the following day. So
I don't know. We don't do well on punishing the day after. You see, Because they're
you
kind of past that.
He knows full well that actions have consequences beyond the night. Because I'm a practicing bastard, and you're clearly not. So.
To wake them up when they're feeling happy in the morning, go, I'm going to make you pay for what you did yesterday. Seems a little bit harsh.
The other one is if I buy something that I will go to like local cafe and can I have a cake for my pudding afterwards? It's like, only if you behave. If not, I'm going to eat it in front of you. And he thought I was joking, and I wasn't.
Oh God, that's so mean. That's like the meanest thing ever.
But he's only done that the once. And, he now knows that is a real... You see, the thing is, you only have to be an asshole once, and they know that is an actual identifiable consequence of behaving badly, and they cease to behave badly, Kaz. I'll be honest with you, there's no biro on the walls of my house. I'm just saying.
Can't argue with that, to be fair.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ed's going to end up in a nursing home when he gets older. These kids are going to be looking after him.
I'm going to end up dissolved in a bath of acid. But, given I have no other retirement plans, it doesn't actually bother me that much.
So you've been up to this weekend?
It's been a fairly busy week work-wise. But yesterday, I took the boy down to London to see a good friend of mine. He has a son who's a month and a bit younger than mine. And it was brilliant because the first time they met, they were less than one. And weirdly, small children are fiercely territorial. So that didn't go very well. But like yesterday, it was great. They just hurtled around East London, entertaining each other. And it was actually, I had a genuinely nice day out. So that was all good. Today I've come back, I handed him back to his mum. I've done some work both for you and for somebody else. I made some soup, watched a bit of the rugby, and now I'm settling into the very large quantity of beer that I've accrued because I've discovered that I've rediscovered the joy of not doing these podcasts sober, and frankly it's fantastic. So yeah, it's been good. I have been watching something on Netflix, but we'll do that at the end because it says that we've got a list of Netflix things. I have enjoyed something which I never expected to enjoy that much, and I feel it's only worth telling other people about it in case they were thinking the same way as me.
Okay, good stuff. Well, I've been to Yorkshire, East Yorkshire, with a Mustang. So it's first long drive out. So we went to it's the first time I've ever been to a car meet in February, and I've got to say it's not very enjoyable standing out in the cold.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought they didn't start till the summer.
They don't normally start this summer, but this one runs all year round. But
no one in Yorkshire could tell the difference. So.
Yeah.
They just get going early.
Yeah, but no, it's been good. It was good to get out and about, and it was a breakfast meet. So by the time we get down there, it was 2 hours there and 2 hours back. So that was a good run out, and it was good to see some friends that I don't normally see till spring and summer. So yeah, it's quite good. And
just imagine you all sat in your cars with the engine running and the heated seats on, just phoning each other because no one actually wants to get out into the cold. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's not as bad as that. And it was a nice venue called the Water Wheel, so everybody was piled in there, and we all had cooked breakfasts and that kind of thing, and that was good fun. Good to get away. Good to get away from the computer, I've got to say. I've had 2 days where I haven't done anything work related, which is good for me on a weekend because normally it's all work related. So it's
well, you need to balance out your lifestyle, mate. Stop working at weekends. It's not good for you.
Well, hang on a second. I want to wade in here because I have an opinion about everything because they're like arseholes. I don't know about you. I find it easier if circumstances dictate for me to do a small amount of work 7 days a week. I'd rather do that than come back to a shit show on Monday because I've made a point of having 2 days off.
Yeah. Normally, I enjoy working a weekend normally because there's no distractions. Because during the week, everybody wants to send in emails and phone calls and all that kind of thing. Weekend, people tend to do their own things. So I get more done on a weekend sometimes than I do during the week. But yeah, it's good to have a weekend off now and again.
I love it when people say no distractions. I never understand that. I'm using a device for work which is connected to the summation of mankind's knowledge. How can you possibly say there are no distractions? I lost 40 minutes today trying to work out how the engine in the Porsche 356, the standard 2-cam one, differed from the 4-cam Carrera engine. 45 minutes looking at translated German stuff because it was really interesting. Well, interesting stuff. I disappeared down a rabbit hole of knowledge I had not previously spent any time studying. Before I knew it, the best part of an hour gone. But I do know quite a lot about 4-cylinder air-cooled Porsche engines now. So that's handy, potentially. I don't know.
Right.
But when you say no distractions, that's not the case for me. I'm very, very easily distracted by myself, mainly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But you get what I mean. There's other people are not trying to contact me and not trying to read it, so I can sit and...
So, yeah, it's only yourself that you can be a distraction.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love it. That Michelin web sketch.
And
have you got
YouTube.
Fortunately, I haven't got past the Wikipedia stage. That's a different problem altogether.
Wikipedia and YouTube
Oh, dear. Yeah, it's hard.
You know, YouTube is definitely becoming a real distraction for me.
There's a new feature on Apple Kit where it tells you how much screen time you've done.
I know that. Do we need to actually set each other's parental controls? So we actually just set each other's IT systems up, so we have to ask each other for the passwords to access our major points of distraction. Who knows what it could do for our productivity or annoying one another?
So that would be
possibilities are limitless.
Whoever deals with you, Ed, that's a full-time job, is it not?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I thought that. Right, let's do some podcasting on the podcast. Kaz, you have a delicate way of doing the competitions. You're very thoughtful and polite, so on you go with our current competitions.
Win a Yamaha Musicast 50 speaker worth $399, which closes 11th of March. That sounds awesome. Win a GT Omega Racing Pro office chair worth $199. That competition's been open for forever. Closes 20th of February. Win a pair of Mission QX2 bookshelf speakers in rosewood. These were the ones that Ed last week said were terrible. Don't go for this competition. They're worth $399. That closes 12th of March. And win a copy of Star is Born on Blu-ray. That closes February 21st. Really great film. Check it out.
Did you get that the wrong way around? I went off to get more beer, but I was sketchy about the Yamaha, but the missions are amazing.
Yourself.
I didn't get it the wrong way aund. I was being supremely sarcastic.
Oh, wonderful!
You waxed lyrical non-stop about the missions.
Yeah.
And completely, so I reversed it.
Good.
I'm saying get the Yamaha, don't get the rosewood.
To be fair, there's some cracking.
There's nothing wrong with the Musicast 50.
But the mission is a great prize.
Oh, Christ, here we go again.
No, I have to say also, I've since watched The Star is Born. I really enjoyed that as well. That's a good prize and all.
I quite fancy that, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
It's a tough watch, but it's really good.
Well, it's tougher than Requiem for a Dream.
No, come on, it's a watch like Crazy Heart. If you've seen Crazy Heart, Jeff Bridges, country singer, anyone involved in country music is.
Yes, we all know about country music.
Quite a lot of country music, and
you never get your house back, never get your car back, never get
you haven't experienced the coyote, mate.
You need to experience the coyote. Then you know all about country.
They need a proper internet radio station, because if they did, I would genuinely listen to it.
Anyway, competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK and not Phil, and previous competition winners.
Competitions are open to everyone but Phil.
Yeah, it's basically it.
Established last week. Yeah, basically it is. Leroy won Mile 22 on Blu-ray.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations to Leroy.
Yeah,
and indeed goodbye to Kaz for his last podcast.
Get on with it. Right, hardware news is next. It's surprising me that it's 2019 and we're still talking about this subject, but another bricks and mortar hi-fi chain has disappeared. Actually, they've lasted quite a long time, because I thought the industry would have imploded long before now, just because of the internet, online shopping, and the fact that people really did start to take the piss going into retailers, demoing equipment, and then going home and buying it online for cheaper.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's the fact that people taking other people's time and resources and then going and buying it elsewhere. I just do not agree with that one iota. And I don't know about you guys, maybe we're old-fashioned, but I would much rather deal with somebody who took their time, demonstrated the product to me, allowed me to have as much time with it as humanly possible. I would rather spend the extra 10% rewarding that person for taking the time and treating me as a human being and so on, rather than saying, yeah, thanks mate, going home and buying it online for 10% cheaper. I know it's human nature to get things cheaper, but maybe it was different when I was a kid and growing up, because we always used to boast about how much things cost.
Well, when we were kids, there was no internet for one thing.
Well, that's it. But now, society seems to be how little you pay for things, or how little you're prepared to pay for things. It seems to be back to front from what I'm used to anyway. But yeah, I used to have some good friends that worked in hi-fi stores and home cinema stores and that kind of thing. Used to be 6 or 7 and round about where I live now, and there's one left, which is really quite a sad state of affairs, really.
The problem is the retailer in question, just so we know, is Superfi, who had 6 stores. Now, these two things have to be separated. If there is anyone who was formerly working for Superfi who has been affected by this, you have my deepest sympathies. I hope that there is something out there, either within industry or otherwise, that you can find to move on from here. And I wish you the very best of luck. Separate to this, obviously, it's a fairly clear indicator that things aren't exactly rosy out there. But equally, as well as the things that Phil's just been talking about, there's some issues with dealers not identifying a niche for them to successfully operate. And Superfi, if you like, was particularly affected by this because it wasn't necessarily able to do proper bargains in the Richer Sounds school of sales, but then it never necessarily was dealing in the same more aspirational circles that Audio T and Seven Oaks sort of, and also in terms of what Phil was saying, Superfi was a particularly good AV dealer, multi-channel dealer, but the nature of multi-channel sales, as you say, is they have moved online in quite significant proportion. When you start marketing home cinema amplifiers on the understanding they set themselves up, that does, if you like, that is a subconscious or conscious red rag to a bull that you don't need an expert to assist you in what you're doing with it. And that's possibly not a strictly accurate reality, but that's certainly the message that people seem to take from it. So there are ultimately this isn't great news under any circumstances, and it definitely sort of suggests that things aren't brilliant out there. But before we assume that this is the first of many dominoes to fall, I believe that there were specific things that ailed Superfi which do not necessarily apply to some of the other chain stores out there, and decent independents have identified what they need to do to successfully service their areas and do that very effectively. Now, regrettably, in many cases, this means two things. Many of them have moved away from multi-channel altogether, and others have not only moved away from multi-channel altogether, they've also moved away from selling anything which isn't pretty expensive. I do a dealer visit piece for another magazine, and on occasions I visit dealers and their entry level system, so source, amp and speakers, their starting point is around 10k, and it goes up from there. And they are essentially, they take customers who have started their journey from other dealers and they take them on, but they don't do the first rung in the ladder. A commendable number of them still do, but as Phil points out, and for a number of other reasons as well, entry-level audio systems are not necessarily a great fit for successful and profitable high street retail. I wait to see if anything comes out of further comes out of the news regarding Superfi, because there are a number of odd bits of information missing, but it is unfair and unwise to speculate as to what what happened until a bit more information is out in the public domain.
Let's not speculate then. Let's wait till the information comes out there. But it is sad to see another retailer going under like that. And it's changed so much, and of course the technology's changed. That's why the high street has changed so much. There's a lot of turbulence going on at the minute, and it's not just because of Brexit and all the rest of it. It's people's shopping habits are changing, and it doesn't necessarily mean to say that online is doing well either at this moment in time, because there are signs that online isn't the be all and end all as well. So it seems to be industry wide at the minute.
It's very, very complicated. There's no getting around the fact that a lot of products can be purchased online, and I don't necessarily agree with restricting people's rights to do so. Equally, if stuff is being sold online and the onus is then that somebody other than the online retailer will take up the slack for after sales care, that's not acceptable. And there's also, on a more complicated level, certain products, just because you can have them shipped to your door, I don't necessarily think that it's a great idea to buy them without seeing them first. Classic case in point, those Grado headphones I did late last year. I adored the way they sounded. I loved they were, well made and all the rest of it. Could I actually live with them? God, no. And my review reflected that. If you found them comfortable and you got on with them, almost untouchable at their price point. But if you bought those sight unseen, I think you'd find that a very interesting experience. Yeah. And the same applies to loudspeakers and so many other things. With a lot of AV equipment, as you guys have pointed out, there are measurable standards for it to hit, and a lot of advice on how to achieve those standards. But even if it's as simple as buying AV speakers, you can have many different flavors of correct, and you've got to go with what suits you best. And if you're doing that, if you're spending a lot of money without getting any handle on what it sounds like, that's not a happy path. That's not a great place to be.
Yeah, it's been a while since I last bought any kit where I went and actually demoed it and actually purchased it. Obviously, the industry we're in and the industry we're working, we tend to get to see things. We don't have to go out and buy stuff. When was the last time you went and bought anything, Steve, that... actually, that's probably the wrong question to ask, because you've just bought a projector.
Yeah. I would always advocate, if you're spending a significant sum of money, demoing the equipment beforehand, be it audio or video. And as you said at the beginning of this conversation, Phil, if you're doing that in someone's store and using their time, then at least have the decency to buy it off them and don't go and just use them as a demo service and then go and buy it elsewhere for cheaper. I think that's pretty mean. But and if you do that, those companies are going to go out of business eventually, because they can't survive, they don't sell anything, and then you've got nowhere to go and demo your kit either. So, but yeah, I think anyone who buys expensive audio video equipment sight unseen, is a fool to themselves, because you need to spend time and look at things, because you just can't tell from reading marketing blurb online. And you might get a feel a little bit from a review, but then again, everyone has different. Even when you look at a TV. The way you interact with that television can be very different from one person to the other. So I mean, personally, I love WebOS and I love the Magic Remote, but I know people that hate the Magic Remote and hate WebOS. So, swings and roundabouts. But I'd always recommend testing things out before you before you buy them.
And of course, the problem is places to go and do that are becoming less and less and less. And unless you live in a city. Unless you're in a big city somewhere, you're really struggling. So it is a sad state of affairs. And we'll come back to this one, no doubt, when there's more information. So talking about buying things, Steve bought a projector recently after demoing.
I ordered it. I ordered it on the way out of the demo. Yeah,
but the thing was, the demo was for the model that costs three times as much as the one you bought.
I took a bit of a gamble there. The demo we had was actually the NX9. Which is the eShift 8K model. I ordered sight unseen. Just come back on what I just said. Having said that, I've been using JVC projectors for a decade, so I was fairly confident they were going to deliver. But yes, I ordered the N7 on the way out of the demo, and it finally arrived on Thursday afternoon, late Thursday afternoon.
And I hope it was good then.
It is. It's really good. It's interesting. They've I mean, if you're familiar with JVC projectors, it doesn't look massively dissimilar. It's a lot higher its height is bigger, but the footprint's largely the same. The basic layouts, central lens and air vents on either side, connections at the rear, and a few little basic controls at the rear. They've redesigned the remote control. I really like it. I think it's a really nice little remote. And they put the light button at the bottom in a big button, so it's easy to find. And the layout's really sensible, and you got sort of shortcuts to important menu features you want to get into quickly. So that's nice. The menu system's basically the same, but there is an interesting change. Now, instead of before where you had lens memories. So, you could have a different aspect ratio, say 1.78 to 1, 1.85 to 1, 2.35 to 1, and you would just select the different aspect ratio in the lens memory. Now, rather than just that being saved, there's just 10 memories, and each memory can have aspect ratio, so lens memory effectively. It also can have blanking, if you want to use that. It can have a whole host of pixel adjust if you want to adjust the pixels, and you can do that for each memory. So now when you press the memory button on the remote, it brings up the 10 ones and you just select the one you want. And I think that's partly because this is a 4K native 4K projector, which is the big deal about these new projectors. They're native 4K. So it's the first native 4K projectors from JVC. And like the Sony's, the actual panel is
4096.
Yeah. Rather than 3840. So it's actually a slightly different shape. So what you end up doing is you can, if you want to, there's also one where it's got, at the bottom of these menus, it's got that aspect ratio, and you can select either auto, native, or zoom, which slightly zooms out the image to fill up the panel. So I think that's why they've changed that and given you a series of menus, a series of memories where you can do lots of different things in that memory, not just the lens itself, not just the lens memory, but it's like an overall memory. So that's quite a nice feature. The N7 doesn't have a motorized lens cover. Unlike, say, the X7-900 from the generation before. It comes with a bit of my few gripes, but it comes with a really hard plastic cover that I ain't putting on and off my lens because it's just you have to sort of shove it on and pull it off, and I just think over time it's going to damage it. So I wouldn't actually use a lens cover just because I don't like the idea of putting it on and off. The ones in the previous generations were like plastic, but they had like a bit of felt around the outside, and they sort of just slotted in and out really smoothly and comfortably. This is like clipping it on the outside of the lens casing.
Is it the same size?
Yes, it's just slightly larger.
You could order it as a spare.
Oh no, sorry, no, you can't order. No, this is a completely different lens assembly. And also
made.
You could do, yeah. I just got to keep your room reasonably dust free, and occasionally just give it a little wipe with a lens cloth.
You don't ceiling mount yours though, do
no.
you? Yeah, because you would never reach it, would you? Really, if it was ceiling mounted?
Just reach it. I'm like, oh yeah. Also, the one other slight gripe is that the vents are pretty big on either side, and you do get a bit of light spill out of there. So,
do you? Oh, that's interesting.
You can clearly see into the inside of the projector through I think the previous generations there was more of a honeycomb thing inside which blocked the light. These seem, I mean, I don't know whether they need to get more air through, but not that it's any brighter. I mean, it's no brighter than the N7 is 1,900 lumens, and so was the X7-900. Interestingly, and this is the one thing that if I got one disappointment, it's the contrast isn't as good as the X7-900. It's got a native 80,000 to 1 as opposed to 130,000 to 1.
Is it noticeable?
And that is noticeable.
Right.
Straight away, I thought.
This was my concern because obviously you move into a new chip.
Yes.
It's a native chip, and something has to give. It's not the same unit that JVC have been using in the past with the 1080, where you do get that contrast, and this was a concern. I mean,
even if you get the NX9, which is very expensive, that's still only 100,000 to 1. It's brighter, it's 2,200 nits, but it's only 100,000 to 1. So this new generation the black levels aren't as good as the previous generation. I think I'm just going to be honest and say that's the case, which is slightly disappointing. But having said that, they're still better than anyone else in terms of black levels against the competition. And by the competition, I mean Sony at the moment. Having recently had the 870 I would take the N7 over that any time.
Right, but again, Sony certainly up against the X7900 that I've got here as a reference. When I looked at the 570, the 870, and even the 270, the colour performance was better on the Sony. So, how does the N7 stack up colour-wise?
Color wise, it's good. I mean, it covers 98% of. I measure it at 98% of DCI-P3 using the Rec 2020 color space, which the little filter goes in for. And on Rec 709, it covers it pretty much perfectly. The tracking is pretty good. I mean, I got to caveat this by saying that I haven't put many hours on this bulb yet. So I was doing measurements with only 3 or 4 hours on the bulb, and I wouldn't normally do that. Normally, I would want 50 hours on before I start taking serious measurements. So I should caveat that by saying this was, it only came Thursday night. I was doing some work on Friday. I've only really had yesterday with it. So a lot of this stuff is still fresh. I still need to spend more time with it.
Yeah.
But my general impression is so I should say also the N7 is not THX certified, unlike the N7, the X7900. So only the NX9 is THX certified. So there's no THX mode. But I've got to say, if you set the natural picture mode, D6500, 6500 Kelvin, I think they call it, 6500K. That's pretty close. Or you can go, basically, it's a little bit too much red, 6500, and a little bit too much blue, and 7500. Just take your pick. And obviously, you can calibrate that to delta E's of below 1. So natural for SDR content is a good starting point. Gamma measures 2.4 measures roughly at 2.4 and 2.6 measures around 2.6, so they're pretty accurate. So out of the box, it delivers a pretty accurate picture, even though it's not THX certified. And then when it gets to HDR, they got their new feature, which is their dynamic tone mapping feature. So this reads the metadata on the disk and then adjusts the image accordingly. Now, I should preface that by saying, if there's metadata on the disk for it to read, because I immediately discovered that, certainly as with 20th Century Fox disks, that can be an issue because they don't seem to have the metadata there, or it's not very easy to read because if it can't read the metadata, then you just get standard tone mapping and an option with a slider to adjust it to darker or brighter depending on how it looks on your screen. Because as I think we were saying last week, Phil, when it comes to HDR, projectors aren't the ideal technology. They aren't particularly bright, particularly when you compare it to a TV. So there is a bit, tone mapping is key.
Yeah.
In my experience to date, it works quite well. It does work quite well. I still think HDR is crap on a projector ultimately, and that's not me knocking JVC. Any projector I've seen, pretty much, I've always, it's always disappointing compared to seeing it on a TV.
It's never going to be the same as on a TV, and it all comes down to the tone map and how the projector, tone maps to its capabilities, and some are better than others. I had high hopes for the JVC HDR thing, but if it's working on metadata and metadata is not there,
if the metadata is there, it works really well. I mean, as I say, I popped the post. I had the post on 4K disc. And the reason I put it in was because I wanted to see a 1.85 to 1 image, so I could set the 1.85 to 1, lens memory. For that lens memory, I wanted to set it at 1.85 to 1. So that's why I put it in. And I immediately, when I checked the HDR in the menu, the dynamic tone mapping, it wasn't doing it. There was no metadata there. So on some discs that's going to be an issue. On most discs, though, at least most discs I've tried, it's been fine. It reads the metadata and it adjusts it, and I've got to say it does work quite well. It's nice to have that option. You can turn it off if you want to. You can turn it off. You can turn it on, and you can also, even when it's dynamically doing, you can also, you've got the option to change it slightly if you want to increase the brightness. So there are options there, which is more than we've had before.
So when it's switched off, is it changing the tone map for 1000 net and 4000 net, or is it doing just one tone map?
I think it's just doing one tone map because it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I can tell so far, like I say, it's still early days, but So overall, I mean, obviously, one thing I will say: the all-glass lens and the 4K panel, the images are pin sharp, and they look really good. You put in a genuine 4K disc and it looks awesome. The color coverage in terms of HDR as well, really good. So overall, I've been really impressed. My only caveat is, like I said, that the contrast ratio isn't as good as the previous generation. Right.
So I guess the question is, do you go with a 7900 and E-shift, or do you go with a native and lose a bit on the contrast?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on I mean,
and save $2,000 in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say the 7900 is a fantastic projector, and aside from the fact it's not native 4K, you can't knock the image on that projector. It looks absolutely superb. I will say that I do think that the image is noticeably sharper than it is with eShift, in my opinion.
Is it cleaner, Steve? And you know what I mean by that.
Yes, it is. It is. It's very clean and it's very sharp. And I think if you really want a genuine 4K image, it's definitely worth getting.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because the contrast ratio is still good. I mean, it's just a bit disappointing because I'm coming from I had a 7500 before, so all right, not a 7900, but they're both basically exactly the same. I'm coming from a very good contrast performance, so it's maybe more noticeable. Comparing it to, say, like I said, the 870 that I had over Christmas, I would say that the N7 has the edge in terms of its contrast performance. It's
good because, I mean, we're talking about a new set of chips here on the JVC, and that's the one thing that is quite annoying with the X7900 when you notice it, and that is the image noise that's in there. So you're saying that's now gone with this new chipset? It's not as noisy?
Not noisy yet, no, definitely not. Yeah, you're right. If you get up close to the image screen particularly, you can notice it. And on the previous generation, the X7900 and 7000 and 7500, they were a bit noisy, weren't they? I mean, and also the other thing, you don't have now. There's no eShift device in there. It's also that annoying noise it makes. It's gone, and it is noticeable.
It is. You tune it out because I can't hear it now.
Out, but I've got to say this. But I mean, it's 21 dB. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased with that. It's nice and quiet. I mean, I don't regret getting it. To put it that way, I'm really pleased with it.
Okay, so what we're going to do is Steve's going to put together his first impressions, his first thoughts in a review. We're not going to score it at the moment.
Yeah, because like I say, I have almost no time.
Yeah,
and I would put 50 hours on a bulb first before really calibrating it.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is Steve's going to do that. We'll publish that, and then as soon as we can get our hands on, or I can get my hands on the review sample when it comes through. Because we don't want to do it to Steve's personal projector. When the review sample comes through, I will soak test that for 50 odd hours straight out the box, and then we'll do all the testing and hit it hard. Whereas it's Steve's personal machine, I'm not going to ask Steve to do that. I'm
not shoving 50 hours on my bulb.
Exactly. So we'll wait on the review sample coming through. We'll do it on that one, and we'll also do a video and stuff and go through the menus and all that kind of thing. So Steve's first thoughts will be up within the week. Steve, am I right?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, so you can look out for that. We're going to talk about projectors and large screen TVs. We're already up against the clock, so we're going to move that on to maybe talk about that next week or the week after, because we've got lots of projectors coming through at the minute. I've got a nice one that turned up from Optoma the other day, which was quite an odd looking thing. So we'll talk about all that probably next week or the week after. And is large screen TVs, are they getting so good now that we don't need projectors? It's a question that gets asked now and again on the forums, and I've noticed lots of interest in that subject. So we'll come back to that one. Ed's going to wrap up hardware. Be talking about some monitor audio speakers, Ed.
Yeah, these are the latest members of the Gold. This is the Gold fifth or sixth generation of the Gold loudspeakers. This is the smallest stereo member, the 100, two-way stand mount, and as I'm aware that we're against time, the review is already up. So if you want to pour through the details, that's where it is. But the highlight to take away from this is that some time ago, I reviewed the Platinum 100, which is an incredibly good loudspeaker. There's no getting this is what I'm about to say is not to denigrate the quality of the Platinum 100 in any way, shape, or form, but it's after spending some time with the Gold 100, this generation of Gold, you are getting, at least 85% of the performance of the Platinum loudspeaker for half the money. And arguably the Gold is better looking as well. It's a really very, very talented loudspeaker indeed. The only thing I would say is that if you are raised on the original monitor audio sort of sound, that which is on the bright side of neutral, let's leave it at that, these speakers are probably going to be a bit of a surprise to you, because they really aren't. Since they've switched to that speaker, this driver that they describe as a high frequency accordion, which I love as a phrase. These aren't. I was using these hard on the end of electronics, which could also be described as quite forward if you use them incorrectly, and no, not so much as a whimper of nastiness. It's an exceptionally good loudspeaker, and just as importantly, it is a beautifully made, beautifully finished, and as far as I'm concerned, reasonably attractive one as well. If you are looking for a stereo pair of speakers to partner up with some of the all-in-ones that we've been looking at over the last 18 months, you could do an awful lot worse than have a look at these. Needless to say, I'll be looking at a couple of other bits and bobs in this price point as well. This isn't the end point. They haven't been awarded a best in class or anything like that, because we don't necessarily know where best in class sits at this point, but they are absolutely brilliant. And the review's up, and do feel free to read it and pass your thoughts on.
Okay, so yeah, we are racing on, but then we've got 2 cinema reviews to do and some disc releases and so on. So we are up against it. It'll probably be a 6-hour recording, but you never know. So thanks for that, Ed. The review is up there. Go and have a read of the review. If you've got any questions for Ed, then shove them in the comments section, and he will get around to them when he's sober. Right, so that's hardware out of the way.
You wish.
That's hardware out of the way. We'll be back with movie reviews and news next. So, movie reviews, you've actually got 2 of them. Am I the only one that's seen Alita, Battle Angel?
Yeah, so far. I'm not seeing it Tuesday.
Right, okay. So I decided to go on the opening day, on the Wednesday. I decided to pay the £5 extra on top of my Limitless card to go and see it in 3D IMAX. I'm very lucky that I've got a 3D IMAX, which is like 25 minutes drive from where I am in the Metro Centre. It's not the largest IMAX screen, but it is a proper IMAX screen. It's just not the largest one, but it's a good experience in there. And I've got to say, I went in with low expectations of the film, but also it's been a while since I actually saw a 3D IMAX movie. I picked a central seat about 3/4 of the way back in the auditorium, and I've got to say I was blown away. Absolutely blown away by the presentation. So, Odeon at Metro Centre, I applaud you, because it was fantastic in terms of the presentation, the volume, the brightness of the projector, and all the rest of it. It was absolutely spot on, which just made the film for me. Like I said, I had low expectations. There'd been a lot of rumours and bad feeling around about it that I'd certainly read into it when I've read about this online and so on. I don't know a hell of a lot about the source material either, so I was unaware of, the history to this. I did know it was James Cameron and John Landau. I've met John Landau, very, very nice bloke. This was when 3D was starting around about Avatar, so I met him at a Panasonic event back in, that'd have been 2010. So, these guys know what they're doing. You're talking about James Cameron. He knows what he's doing when it comes around sci-fi. Obviously, he's not directing this time around. And I don't know, maybe that gives the impression that he wasn't that into the material, because it was at one point going to be his big project, and he kind of let it fall by the wayside because Avatar became the main focus of his attention. So there was all this playing against it. And I've got to say, it's not a movie without its issues. There are some big plot holes in it. It plays like 2 different movies. The first hour is absolutely world building, and it's done the way you expect it to be done, character development and so on. And then you reach the tipping point where they're rushing towards the end, and things get forgotten about, and characters stop being developed, and their motives and so on become questionable, and it just feels rushed. And it also feels like a franchise builder, which we kind of expected anyway before we went into it. But in terms of sheer spectacle, this thing absolutely blew me away. The sound mix is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. This is going to be demo material when it comes out on disc. In IMAX, it takes up the whole visual periphery, and the 3D was outstanding. And it's Cameron's 3D, and what I mean by that is it's subtle 3D. It's not things jumping out the screen at you or anything. It adds depth to the image, so the screen goes backwards instead of coming forwards when you're talking about parallax. It creates that solidity around the image, so it doesn't feel fake in any way, almost like a shallow depth of field. And there's lots of shallow depth of field playing around as well with different shots and so on. And it is a spectacle, absolutely. And the movie, I would say, for the first hour is absolutely classic sci-fi in the way that they're building a world, and it's believable, and the characters are and I get around her eyes as well. I thought it'd be distracting, but actually it's not that bad. It really stands out in a trailer when you're watching something for 2 or 3 minutes. In a trailer, that really stands out. It's a bit like Bohemian Rhapsody, where it was Rami, and a bit after a few minutes he became Freddie. It's that kind of thing where it stands out for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you get used to that's the look, and it doesn't become distracting after that. So overall, I mean, I think Kumari scored it right at 7 out of 10. In terms of the presentation, the 3D, the soundtrack, and it is 10 out of 10. Absolutely. And the CG is phenomenally good. The action sequences, the fight sequences, everything is absolutely jaw-dropping in terms of presentation. It's just, like I say, it reaches the centre point. You're getting into Act 3, and it feels like the everybody starts running towards the end, and then obviously it sets it up for a sequel. We all knew that was going to be the case, and that feels a bit cheap at the end. It feels like they kind of dropped the ball at the end, which is a bit of a shame. But
the big complaint I've heard, Phil, is that it's like it's setting up 4 other films,
yes,
rather than telling a good story in its own right.
Yeah, well, the first hour is excellent. So it's actually building the world, building the characters, and the fleshing the characters out. There's certain characters, I'm not going to mention them here because it'll spoil it, but there are certain characters that they're spending time with, and they're spending time developing the relationships and so on. And then it sort of reaches midway point where there's a big battle, and there's consequences that follow that, and then it just feels like it's this mad dash to the end. And they introduce this sport to the story, but they don't flesh it out in any way. They don't explain any of the basics for you. And obviously, if you're building a world, you have to give people the rules by which this world will work, and certain things work within it. And they miss that with this sport, and it's baffling. So you don't actually get the context as to why this sport that they're playing is such a big part of the story, because it isn't fleshed out enough. The rules aren't there for you, so you have trouble. And I certainly had trouble with it. And the way that the film uses that towards the final third of the film, I found that distracting as well, because, like I say, they'd spent all this time building up to it, and then it just felt rushed. And yes, they are setting things up because, again, I don't want to spoil things, but relationships that should carry a lot more weight by the end of the movie, there's no consequences to what happens, and that I found that a bit grating as well. But in terms of spectacle, in terms of the money is on the screen, it absolutely is on the screen, and it is phenomenal. If you can see it in 3D IMAX, go and see it in 3D IMAX. Pay the extra to see it, because it's only going to be IMAX the once. You're only going to get this chance to see it while it's on general release. And yes, your home cinema system's great and all the rest of it, but you can't actually beat sitting in front of such a huge screen with such a big sound system and things doing the way it should be done in such a large space. It really is an experience. So if you can, go and see it. But the movie could have been a bit better. But 7 out of 10 is not a bad score. But yeah, there are a few things that, like you say, Steve, that just, there wasn't enough care taken. Tell us a good story and then give us the sequels.
Exactly.
But it felt like it was an hour-long film, and then it was world building for the next films to come, and they dropped the ball at that point.
Yeah, which I thought unfortunately seems to be a common problem these days. They're thinking about the 2, 3, and 4 in the franchise, and not thinking about number 1.
Yeah, and that might change with the next review that's coming up, because it's a sequel, and I don't think it's doing very well, Kaz.
No, I heard that. I heard that after actually seeing it. It's funny, you mark Alita 7, Kumari marked Alita 7 as well, and thinking about scoring, because I marked Lego Movie 7. I think there's an expectation going in, because I think a lot of people will find a 7 for Lego Movie 2 a little bit disappointing, whereas people are finding a 7 for Alita quite good news, because it could have been Valerian. So I think it's interesting the way that the scoring has worked out for both of those. I enjoyed Lego Movie 2. I think as sequels go, it's always a tough nut to crack a sequel to a good, witty, strong first movie. The directors didn't return, but they returned as the writers. So the script is still there. It's a bit saggy in the middle, and it isn't as good as the first movie, as fresh as the first movie, as punchy as the first movie. But it's still a solid sequel. But it appears to be really, really doing badly at the box office. And I don't know why that suddenly happened.
Then you see, I was thinking, well, it's half term, but up here it's not half term. Half term is not until the 15th, which is...
It's not half... That's same for Milton Keynes.
Is it? Right. So it seems to be some parts of the country will be half term and then other parts are a bit later. So it could be that the box office picks up, is what I'm trying to get at, because the school holidays haven't actually happened yet in some areas of the country, and that could affect box office because, the Lego movie, I would expect it to play well to holiday audiences. So... I'm
wondering if the reason it's underperformed as badly as it has is because, although it's the second Lego movie, in the sense it's a sequel to the Lego movie, it's the fourth Lego movie. We've already had Batman Lego movie and the Ninjago Lego movie. And maybe people are like, oh God, another bloody Lego movie. It's been 4 movies in 4 years. And I think there's just a bit of fatigue there. And people have just thought, another Lego movie, I could do an hour.
Well, the other flip of the coin is, I didn't even know it was out till Kaz told me he was going to see it.
Yeah,
he hasn't been that heavily promoted, is it?
No.
Now I think about it. I mean, I saw that Chris Pratt and Elizabeth Banks were on Graham Norton last week, but advertising-wise, it's not been heavily promoted.
No, not at all.
It's funny, isn't it? Because the first film was a big hit and universally liked, and critically acclaimed and did really well. It seems as though I don't know whether Warner's just didn't have any. Maybe they just thought, it's just another Lego movie.
It is also interesting times though, because 5 years on from the first film, and the kids, the top end of the age bracket, the kids who are going to have seen it, are going to be the bottom end of the age bracket of the kids that are going to want to see Alita. If you're 7 or 8, 5 years later, you're going to Alita. You're not going to Lego. So I don't know whether you have to cater for a new market audience that way, because the same people that were at the top end who got a kick out of Lego Movie have moved on. We're 5 years on, and this continues straight on from the end of the last movie. I mean, I showed
it 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's 5 years ago. I showed the kids the last movie the day before, and it continues straight on from the end scene. And I don't think that the same generation of kids are necessarily gonna be up for that. But we'll see how that works for things like Frozen as well, because the same applies there later this year.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear. Frozen is a bit different because it lives or dies on the songs. I didn't realise just how much of a pull the headline song to a Disney thing it actually is. I don't know if that's so applicable to the Lego thing, but it's going to come down to whether someone can make lightning strike twice with something as irritatingly earwormy as Let It Go.
I was going to go and see Lego Movie 2, and I was going to go and see it tomorrow actually, and I'm thinking I might actually, if I'm going to go to the cinema, I'll get the disc for that and I'll go and see Alita again. That's what I'm kind of thinking at the minute.
Have you seen Vice? Has anyone seen Vice?
No, I haven't
I've
seen it.
Vice.
Have you?
I loved it.
I haven't seen it. It's miles away, and it would involve me interacting with people sober, and I don't like that. But that does look. That I mean, obviously, I'm a sucker for a good makeup job, and that does look deeply impressive.
He looks exactly like him.
I mean, Dick. Also, it must be said, Dick Cheney. Please do not interchange fascinating with likable, because they're not the same word. But he is a fascinating human being.
Oh yeah, he is fascinating. He's just not a very likable person.
No, I mean, Bale is. I mean, he does an Oscar-worthy job, and I've seen The Star Is Born. But Bale does a tremendous job at not being Christian Bale. I mean, he is right down to the intonation. Everything about him is this larger than life.
I'm beginning to wonder if Christian Bale exists anymore. I think Christian Bale can't do Christian Bale.
I'm not surprised he thanked Satan for his performance. I wonder whether he made a deal with the devil so that he could actually become these various different characters along the way.
It does strike me as a bit limited.
Yeah, I've got to say, there's some people you can't think. I don't really think I ever want to meet someone. I don't ever want to meet Christian Bale. He just seems like a intense individual. I mean, apparently, on his first film as a child, making The Empire of the Sun, he was arguing with Spielberg. I mean, you're 12. This is your first movie. This is the greatest director who's ever lived. I'll go with his opinion if it's okay with you. But no, apparently he was difficult on set at the age of 12.
I wish I'd ever asked now.
Anyway, so what was your recommendation then, Kaz? I'm going to the cinema tomorrow, whether I like it or not. I need to have the afternoon off. What am I going to go and see?
Well, it sounds like you're going to see Alita again, but I'd go and see Lego Movie 2. I think you'll laugh. I think you'll have a kick out of it. It's got the same kind of double layer of working for adults and kids. There isn't a huge amount out there. If you can hack it, then go see Vice, because that's just as funny for all the wrong reasons. It's a
I'd say
punchy
go see
movie.
Vice. Yeah.
Okay.
If you can.
Right, okay, well, that's sorted. Alita is. Right, moving on. What can we go and see this week, Kaz?
We got Happy Death Day to You, which is out 13th of Feb. That's the sequel to the Happy Death Day, in case you didn't know it. But I'm not sure. I think I'd maybe watch Russian Doll instead.
Have you seen Happy Death Day?
I have seen enough of it to not review it.
Is it any good?
And I review anything.
Yeah,
No,
you will.
I didn't.
That's the one where it's basically a slasher version of Groundhog Day.
It is. I didn't find it work, which is why I said I thought Russian Doll works with this.
Russian Doll, I watched it basically after we got off the podcast recording last week. I watched it over the Sunday night and the following day. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Good,
yeah, really enjoyed it.
I think that's where all the good ideas lie, because next up we got like Instant Family for Valentine's Day. I mean, you can tell the tone of what they're going for around Valentine's Day, aren't they? They're going to go for horrors and comedies and romantic comedies. This is what we got. 15th of Feb, we got The Kid Who Would Be King, which is already flopping massively. I'm not really sure why they thought it would be a hit, but that's what we got. It looks like it was shot at my child's school. And also A Private War, which...
is that the one with Rosamund Pike?
It is.
Yeah.
Serious journalist. She's only
Well,
got
you
one
say
eye.
that. I mean, it must be said, her life story is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Even just written in plain text with no embellishments, it's an incredible story. So if it's been done justice, that could actually be really good.
Yeah, The Kid Who Would Be King. I saw clips from that, or the trailer at least, because Patrick Stewart's in it playing Merlin, and he was plugging it on Graham Norton on Friday night, and it looked abysmal. It's like he aimed low and managed to miss.
It looked really bad.
We are talking about
even
a man
children
who,
were re-rolling their eyes and going, like, I'm not watching that.
well, let's not forget that Patrick Stewart's recent accomplishments include poo in
Playing the poo emoji in the emoji movie. Yeah, I mean, he needs to get a new agent, I think. Although he's doing Picard again, so that might be good. Or Desperate, depending on how you look at it.
This reminds me of that Simpsons.
Making more of the latter.
That Simpsons site gang, Star Trek 8, so very tight.
Very tight.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's what we're going to see at the cinema. Yeah, exactly. So let's move on. Blu-ray releases and 4K. There's not a lot coming up, I've got to say. It's a bit quiet.
It is. We've got a bunch of stuff from Arrow, Climax, Horror, which is Gaspar Noé.
No.
Yeah, causing trouble again. Horror Express, Peter Cushing, and
I like Horror Express. That's the one with
Christopher
Lee Cushing.
Yeah.
Monster on a Train.
Yep.
That's good.
And Kurosawa's Before We Vanish. That's Kiyoshi Kurosawa, not Akira Kurosawa. The guy who does lots of horror. Did Pulse, did Creepy. They're good if you're into your Japanese horror. And Before We Vanish is kind of odd. Post-apocalyptic comedy thing.
Those are words that just hang together perfectly.
Yeah. It's a horror director who's decided to do a post-apocalyptic, pre and post-apocalyptic film where his focus is on relationships, and only he would do it, but it doesn't always work. But if you like this director, then you'll definitely watch it and get something out of it. It's just a different take. It's like watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers directed by a really obscure director, and the end result just leaves you surprised at every turn. But none of you are going to watch this. So turning to the most popular one. Oh, sorry, I can't not miss Night School, because that's just the top release of the year. But that's out on Blu-ray and 4K. Kevin Hart. Going back to school because he needs to get a job or make another movie about nothing. I actually
James
find
Field do that 30 years ago in Back to School.
Yeah, I actually find him quite funny, but I normally find him funny when he's paired with the right person. I saw the trailer to this, and I've got no time for it. So yeah, stick him opposite The Rock. So he was in Central Intelligence and Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah, and he was fine in both of those with The
Rock.
Yeah,
and because the two of them work really well, particularly the role reversal in Welcome to the Jungle, which was awesomely done. This doesn't fly for me at all. So, A Star Is Born, which should be on everybody's list. That's coming out 4K Blu-ray. Review's already up. Tremendous film. Hope it wins some Oscars. Bradley Cooper's directorial debut.
I don't think it's going to, though.
No, probably won't.
Bradley Cooper didn't even get nominated, did he? So they've
which doesn't bode well.
Doesn't bode well at all.
But I mean, he nailed it as a directorial debut. Even if it would be out of character to give a director an Oscar for their first ever film. I don't even know. Has it ever happened?
Yes.
Their first film.
Robert Redford's first film was Ordinary People. He won Best Director.
Warren
Beatty's second film, Reds, and he won.
But Warren Beatty makes a film every 10 years, so second film still means he's...
Braveheart was only Kevin Costner, first directorial.
How do you know these things just like that? It's like you knew the question I was going to ask. Okay, so it does happen. Veteran actors have clearly pulled off amazing directorial debuts that they've been lauded with Oscars for. I'm not sure I would have given Cooper an Oscar for this, but he did nailed a tremendous directorial debut. It's nothing to do with his efforts there. It's a great film, and he's also put in a fantastic performance, best performance of his career. Lady Gaga's unrecognisably good in it, and fantastic singing in a proper drama. So it's not fantastic.
Yeah, he'll obviously win best song. I think that's definitely going to win that Oscar.
It should get more than that, though. Although there have been great performances this year.
It's a solid year though this year. There's lots of quality stuff out there. So
yeah, Black Panther, yeah. So yeah, that's what you got this.
Not saying anything.
This week.
Yeah. So you've seen A Star Is Born on 4K disc?
I have. Yes, it looks tremendous.
What does it look and sound like? This is an AV podcast. What does it look and sound like?
It's Dolby Vision and Atmos, and it looks fantastic. It sounds tremendous. I mean, it takes you to the live performances.
Good.
It's got a fantastically immersive soundtrack. I think the opening scene dips into it, but there's an early Lady Gaga's character, her first step onto stage, it proper raises hairs on your arms. I mean, it's very intoxicating. The visuals are quite demanding because there's a lot of odd lighting, the stage lighting, the different colours. Almost at one stage, it's kind of like epilepsy-inducing flickering.
You mean strobing?
Strobing. That's the word, Phil. There we go.
Good.
So yeah, I mean strobing. It taxes the system, but with Dolby Vision, you're largely reducing any signs of crush, and it looks impressive.
I'd imagine that banding might be an issue then if you're talking about flashing lights and that kind of thing, strong lights with gradation issues and that kind of thing. It might be a good little test disc. I might have to go and buy it.
Yeah, I think you should go and buy it anyway. I don't think it's perfect. I gave it a 9, but I think that for what it puts your system through, I think it's pretty impressive.
Okay, good stuff. Right, so TV, Netflix, streaming highlights. I know you've been hammering Netflix yet again. So just to give you a bit of a break, Kaz, I'm going to go through some stuff that I've been watching recently that I think needs to be highlighted before we get to the end of the month. It's that good. You should be going watching it now. One of them is BBC 4, The Defiant Ones. I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but basically it's Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine. Two completely different people, two really fascinating stories about how they end up with basically music fortune. It's really well edited. I've watched the first 2 episodes. There's only been 2 episodes on so far. Really well edited. I like the way it's structured to tell the story. You keep bouncing backwards and forwards between the 2 stories as you go through the decades and so on. Highly recommend. If you any
I
interest in
recorded
music.
it. I haven't watched it yet, but I did record it on Friday night.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it, Steve. It's one of the better put together documentaries I've seen recently. It's really, really well done. So I'm itching for the next episodes. The other one I wanted to mention again, BBC 4. Again, it's music, and that's bass guitar and drums.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's fantastic. I knew nothing about it till I watched the first one with Stuart Copeland, and I was hooked. And it's a different presenter.
I realised how little I knew about drumming.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating, and the thing is that they don't. It's not just looking at the contemporary use of the instruments. It's going all the way back to how they were originally used to create music, all the way through the decades, and how it's different.
You kind of think like everyone's always had a drum kit. Nope, there's been one guy who's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before drumming was just a single drum.
Yeah, each different thing in a drum kit, it was one person doing that in a band, and somebody had the bright idea of putting it all together. So that's fascinating. Bass, you just think it's going to be about the bass guitar. Wrong, completely wrong. It goes all the way back to the earliest uses of the lower frequencies, all the way through to how lower frequencies are being used in film soundtracks, in music, and all the rest of it to excite the senses and to add more to the sound and so on. And then the last episode is the guitars. So there are 2 cracking series on BBC 4 at the minute. Go and watch them. I was going to wait to the end of the month, but they're so good.
We'll have forgotten by then anyway, so this is useful.
Yeah. Other thing is, car-wise, Grand Tour is really back on form. The last episode was excellent, and Top Gear.
The last episode, that was possibly the finest thing that Richard Hammond has done.
You see, when they do things like that, it
reminds you that he's not a twat.
Yeah,
it's part of it's in some ways for his sins. It's an engineered persona, but that was perfectly done.
Yeah.
And they really start need to doing more than 1 or 2 of these a series, because they are outstanding, and they've been the highlights of the last 2
absolutely.
series.
I mean, Clarkson's one on the GT40, the Ford GT40. That
was James May that did that.
Oh, sorry, it was May.
Clarkson.
Yeah. Sorry, got that the wrong way around. Yeah, but yeah, like you say, I mean, Jim Clark, however you want to. He's such a legend, but he's so forgotten about. When you think of great drivers.
I thought I knew quite a lot about Jim Clark. I didn't realise
Did he die on the Nürburgring?
Hockenheim.
Was it when he went round a blind corner with no camera on?
Well, essentially, it would appear that he was suffering from a slow puncture, but this all crash investigation at that point is a bit rudimentary. But it was more the fact that it was demonstrating in 1965 he basically won everything.
Yeah, absolutely everything.
Yeah. And it's just, and they're entirely right in saying that. I mean, obviously, there are technical limitations to even attempting something like that now, as well as some humongous safety concerns. But the very fact
Hockenheim just go off into the woods.
Well, it still does, but the difference is they've cut the woods back a bit further.
Yeah, you could literally drive into a tree.
Well, that's what happened to him. That's what happened. Yeah, he drove into a tree. He went off the track because there wasn't any what do you call it?
No safety barriers.
The barriers. That kind of
thing. No, I burnt up some HDR, some bandwidth for because just it was well shot, and the bits with the actual Lotus car moving and things like that. It was just. It had the production values of Top Gear. It could have the Grand Tour could still do better with music. And I don't know if you may disagree. I thought that last week's episode with the pickup trucks was formulaic and just
that was terrible.
That was ill considered. But by and large, it's hit more than it's missed.
Exactly.
And that last episode was very well judged indeed.
Yeah, they need to do more of that. They need to do more of the Hammond film. Those types of films. If they did those types of films and car reviews. And a little bit of the humour that they are good at, because the 3 of them do bounce off each other really well. They've got really nice chemistry there. If they concentrated on that, it would be must-watch TV for me. And I think it would appeal to a far wider audience as well. It's when they go back to doing the things like they did with the pickup trucks and so on. It's like, no, and even the special that went over 2 episodes where they did the road trips, I'm getting bored of that kind of thing as well. I think they do the car reviews are really good when they do the car reviews properly. I mean, James May's review of the Alpine was really good. You know, it was honest. It was, you know, they're not scared about keeping people happy. They will give an honest opinion of the product, and I really like that. And those films are superb. And I'm just going to wrap up because Top Gear is back next weekend, next Sunday night.
I'll have to remember to video it because we've been 21 minutes in now. So
yeah, well, I'm up at 3:00 in the morning the next again morning, so I won't be watching it.
And also, can I just literally 90 seconds, because there will be a couple of people like me who've watched this, seen this appear on Netflix months ago, and gone, no, that's for me. I binged watched the Sunderland Till I Die documentary.
Really?
Over the last. Can I just say it's unbelievably good. And I say this as someone
I'm sorry, but Sunderland and the words unbelievably good have never gone together.
Well, unfortunately, it's because Sunderland aren't unbelievably good that it in some way makes it so compelling. But there's 2 things about it. The first thing is that it could so easily have been a hatchet job. Without going into unnecessary detail, it's a matter of public record that Sunderland were relegated from the Premier League 2016 to 2017, and then in the Championship, the league below, 2017 to 2018, managed to get relegated again. So you can go in watching that. But the first thing is there's a tonal shift where clearly the documentary crew have been invited in, you know, because they're hoping to do what Newcastle did a little bit further up the road, who came straight back up. It's like, you can watch us do this. And there's a tonal shift when it becomes abundantly clear that this isn't going to happen, which is just television gold. But you can't help but feel a degree of sympathy for a large number of people involved in it. And I will say, without fear or favour, that Sunderland and indeed most football clubs in the northeast of England do not deserve the supporters that they actually have. People who are prepared to spend money being richly humiliated. It's just, but it's
in the psyche up here, though, Ed. You know, that is the psyche up here. They are resigned to that. When you speak to the fans up here, it's you know, they know how crap they are. You know,
but I am not a huge football fan, and I still literally binged it over 2 nights. It was incredible television, and I would wholeheartedly recommend that if you are scooting around for something different, it's just an unbelievable watch. I couldn't believe how good it was.
Okay, good stuff. Well, we're going to end on one question that gets asked quite a bit on AVForums.
I recommend something.
If you're quick, Steve.
Yeah, well, it's back on Amazon Prime. That was on Netflix. But Amazon have basically bought the series from Sci-Fi. So The Expanse, which is brilliant if you're into science fiction and good science fiction. The Expanse is superb. All 3, the 3rd season is now on Amazon. They've also got season 1 and 2, and Amazon are making season 4, which will be on Amazon later in the year. But season 3 has just appeared out of the blue. I didn't realize, just flicking through, oh, blimey, it's back. But The Expanse is superb, and it's just as good in season 3 as it's been in season 1 and 2. So if you're a fan of that, or you haven't seen it and you like good sci-fi, check it out.
I hope we haven't peaked too early, because we've still got to do all this at the end of the month. So I hope we haven't gone with all the good stuff.
Oh God, I've got so much news to talk about at the end of the month. It's
Grand.
fine.
That'll do. Right. So as I was saying, one question that gets asked a lot on AVForums is 4K streaming worth it, or are you better going and buying a disc? So Kaz, you had the opportunity this week to test that and put that to the test, because you were given a free rental, a 4K free rental. You've been away, you've watched that on the streaming service, and you've already seen this on disc. So tell people about it and tell people about your experience.
Well, I picked Venom because I had access to the Venom disc. Not particularly because it's a great movie, but because it was easy to compare the two. The streaming service is set up to give you 4K. I understand that it offers Dolby Vision, it offers everything, but for this particular package, Venom came with HDR and 5.1. It's a very good package for 4K. It's half the price of the disc.
And who was the streaming service, Kaz?
It's Rakuten. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this right. because
That's how I would pronounce it.
That's how I pronounce it.
I pronounce
so
it.
we're going to go with that because, but it's, I mean, it comes up as a kind of an ad on my TV anyway. So it was an easy click, add the app. It's there. It offers stuff in 4K. There's some good deals on there. The rentals are a lot cheaper.
And we have to point out that they gave you the code for this, so you didn't pay to watch this film. They were kind enough to give you the code. Is that right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they gave me a rental code, so I got 48 hours to check out a movie. You can pick whatever movie you like. I was going to go with First Man, but because it's ahead of the 4K release, but actually I tried to pick something which I could compare to, and something which maybe showcased the system a bit more. So that's why we've got Venom. It is an impressive service because you got 4K at your doorstep straight away on a click. Immediately, I think you can see a difference between the 4K movies on here, although I'm not comparing like for like, but 4K presentation on Netflix, for example, which offers 4K for a lot of its original content. I haven't got any 4K purchases for Amazon, but I do have some accessible, I think, via Google. So there's myriad 4K streaming you can get on a TV, and Rakuten's provision is easily as good as what you get before. The idea that it would offer Dolby Vision enticed me. It was a shame that it didn't do it on a title I'd seen in Dolby Vision. So I'm a little bit torn as to whether that's the reason that I found it slightly different from watching a disc, or whether it's just the fact that sheer bandwidth and streaming power, it's just never going to compete with the megabits per second you're going to get on a disc.
I think people are going to expect differences, Kaz, and you rightly point out that the bit rate and so on, streaming, and you're going to miss out audio wise as well when you compare it to the disc. So we know that those differences are there. So what we're saying is we're not doing a direct comparison, as in, because we don't expect the streaming service to live up to the disc, because like you say, the disc it has better bit rate, it has better audio, and so on. But I guess what we're trying to say here is that if it's not something you're going to go and spend 25 quid on the disc, how does the 4K and the audio streaming stack up in terms of quality? Is it something that you would be happy to live with on a film like Venom?
Yes, I'd go with that for Venom. Yeah, I'd go with it for that. In fact, one big selling point for me, there were a whole bunch of titles available which aren't out even on Blu-ray, let alone 4K. So because we just get the DVDs for them. I noticed the 4K release for, not that anyone else is going to be that interested, the latest Reign of the Supermen DC animated title, and there's a lot of back catalogue titles in there that didn't get very good service at home. We didn't get a 4K release for, I think, The Post or maybe the Incredibles movies. They've all got 4Ks on here.
And is it just resolution, or is it also HDR?
So it advertises that you can have HDR and Dolby Vision. But I only found HDR on a title which I had Dolby Vision on disc. I would say the HDR is pretty good. Again, I think it looks better than what Netflix do, but I think Netflix have their own kind of trademark HDR. I still can't get around either Netflix's HDR or their Dolby Vision, which to my eyes is always set too dark. But so the HDR in this is pretty good. Again, it's not as good as a disc, but I agree with your sentiment, Phil. If you're going to pick and choose between what you can own on disc and what you can have accessible normally a week or 2 weeks before it's actually released, on these streaming titles, or in 4K when you can't even get a 4K disc because they can't be bothered to actually release the physical disc, I can see how this is pretty enticing.
To me, I mean, I'm not Steve, so I don't go and buy everything on 4K Blu-ray like Steve does. But I will go and buy certain things on disc. There's certain films that come out and it's automatically, yes, I will be buying that on disc and I'll pay my 25 quid. But there's other times where I see things. I guess A Star Is Born's one of those examples where I'm not that keen on seeing the film, to be honest with you. I've got an interest in it. So maybe looking at a rental, if it's in 4K and it's in HDR on the rentals, I know it's not going to be as good a bandwidth, as good a bit rate as a disc, but if they're only charging, I don't know what they charge Kaz for a Prime movie like that, but I'm imagining it'll be a lot cheaper than buying a disc.
I think A Star Is Born, I don't want to misquote, but I think it was about £14 versus you're looking at 25 for a disc. I mean, you're still looking at like half the price. Some of them were a tenner, like new releases.
Is that to own though, Kaz, or is that just to stream?
To own. No, to own.
Oh, okay, that's different.
No, streaming is more like a fiver. So for example, I'd give the example of First Man. I don't know whether that's going to be a keeper for me. I haven't seen it at the cinema, and I don't think that the cinematography, from what I hear, is supposed to be naturally conducive towards a massive demo presentation. So if I had cheaper access to a streaming version, then I might favour that.
Well, First Man was shot predominantly, it depends, the early parts of the film are shot on 16mm, the latter parts are 35mm, but the moon sequences, when they're on the surface of the moon, that's shot in IMAX, full frame IMAX on the disc, and it does look pretty impressive. But a lot of the film is quite grainy.
That's a tough call. This is like Mission Impossible all over again.
Yeah.
Oh, is that available?
The Mission Impossible films, I'm pretty sure, are on there. But yeah, anyway. Funnily enough, I watched the trailer for the latest Mission Impossible Fallout, because the trailers are all in 4K as well, or a lot of them I think are. And I watched the trailer for Fallout, and just like the film, the picture is just horrendously graded, apart from the IMAX shots. And I thought even the streaming version, even the download version, looks off.
Do you know what this sounds a little bit like in terms of your options here? This sounds vaguely analogous to the Qobuz Sublime Plus review I did for the music streaming service last year, where essentially this begins to be a little bit like the same thing, where for me it gives me the option to listen to things that I'm just not necessarily going to immediately fork out the money for, either high-res download, vinyl, or something else. It gives me an option for slightly inferior but still high-res content at a price, and it's quite handy in that regard. But when it comes to something I do genuinely still care about, I'm still going to buy it in some form of physical form, or indeed a high-res download.
Yeah, I've got to say, it appeals to me. This model, I think it's something that now I know a little bit more about it, and thanks to them for giving Kaz the code so he could go and check it out for us. It's one of these things I'm going to go and have another look at, because I think it does fill in a niche, and we are, as enthusiasts, we're quite picky about what we watch. But I think if it's as good a stream as Kaz is saying it is in terms of quality for 4K, and it's a rental's a £5, I'm prepared to pay a £5 and take a risk on something. I'm not prepared to pay 25 quid on a disc and take a risk. And I think that's where it appeals to me.
No, I agree with that. That sounds quite promising. And when my bandwidth is a bit less constrained, that sounds like a genuinely excellent option for me, where I'm not that interested in owning that many films. So I'm looking forward to giving it a go under less constrained circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I say back in the day because they've closed it now, but I used to buy discs or get discs, and you'd watch it, and if you didn't want to keep the film, you could download the UV code and fork the film on, and it's essentially costing you a £5 to watch the film and keep a download. And I quite like that way of doing it. You didn't have to keep a physical disc cluttering up space for something that you might not necessarily reach out to watch again in a hurry, and you've got a digital copy. Now, I don't know how this particularly works, but I agree with Phil, for films that you're not naturally going to stick up on the shelf, if there was some way of getting a decent, picture, then it's a pretty good shout. I certainly found it better than the quite obviously Blu-ray quality or Blu-ray style streaming options that are available. So I think that it'd be interesting to see whether there's a price that will hook me in for some of the films I wouldn't otherwise get.
Just imagine how much money you could save, Steve, by not buying everything else.
He can't. He's in a feedback loop of infinite disc buying.
Well, I kind of agree with Steve about purchasing, because I'm just not a renter. because I don't. I like hoarding ridiculous amounts of films and collecting them. I just don't like the idea of renting stuff.
Well, I have a physical media weakness already. I don't need a second. So I think that's the catch to that.
Yeah, but the benefit to this is you don't have to store it anywhere. It's not really a physical media weakness, is it?
Yeah. Is there a time limit, Kaz? If you rent something, do you have to?
It's 48 hours.
Okay.
So the benefit to Venom is that I've got to decide now whether I'll ever watch it again or whether I should just watch it.
But anyway, thanks to Rakuten for doing that. I think they're going to give you a couple more things to watch as well, just so you can build up a little bit more on that, Kaz, as the weeks go on. So it'll be interesting to see when you start looking at other titles, because you only looked at the one for us so far. So it might be a bit interesting to see some other things that you can maybe compare disc-wise and explore the service a little bit more, because it's a name I know. It pops up on my TV. I've never been interested. I've never looked at it. But now that you've had the opportunity to do that, and again, thanks to them for doing that. It sounds interesting. Steve's the only one that hasn't given his comments on this one. What do you think, Steve?
No, I think it makes sense. That you don't want to own. I mean, I've got plenty of discs I bought that I'm never going to watch again. So it makes more sense if it's something if it's a film that, say, I don't know, like 2001, right? I'm obviously going to buy that disc because I love the film and it's a brilliant disc and I want to own it. But if it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that's coming out. I don't know, something like, say, a film that's coming out on disc in the next couple of weeks that I'm not that really bothered about, but I do fancy watching at some point, then streaming makes sense. And as long as the quality's there, then why not?
Would you have done it for The Predator? Because we talked about how you...
I saw that at the cinema, so I've got no excuse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. No, I don't mean that. Exactly. That's why I'm using it as an example, because you saw it at the cinema, but you clearly want to still own it. Now,
that's because I own the other Predator films, and therefore I was just being completist.
Yeah,
it's a sickness,
but
I know that.
Could you not?
Don't talk to me about completionism, because that's just as bad. Actually, shall we, before we disappear down that rabbit hole, we almost reached a point of conclusion there before we got.
Yeah, and then you came in, Ed.
No, this evening, I'm trying to knock this on the head because I've got some stuff recorded.
You've run out of beer. So come on in, complete the circle, Ed.
Well, look, the inference is that if even Steve, I nearly had every single 4K UHD disc that's ever been released with us, says that there's some validity to it. That, to me, would suggest that there is some validity to it. The only catch, obviously, without hoping to, I don't want to kick over another rock. Kaz, do you happen to know what its minimum streaming speed is?
I think it said 20 is below 20, and it's going to start deciding whether or not your system can handle. Well,
the good news is that Steve should be able to start using the service by the year 3201. So it's a bit of, in other words, Steve doesn't have to rush into a decision-making process on this. He's still got a while to go before his internet's actually up to the job.
5G will be along next year. It'll be on 5G now.
Exactly. Yeah, well, no, there will be a solution, no question. But the good news is Steve sees a future in streaming. The internet may even give Steve the ability to start streaming, and hey, that sounds quite cool, doesn't it?
And on that bombshell, well done, Ed. That wraps up the podcast for this week. My thanks to Kaz Harlow.
I told you 1,000,000 times, dance is my life.
Said with such
conviction.
Yeah. Ed Selley.
Once more with feeling.
You're the loser, punk.
Steve Withers.
Do you think I look like a stud?
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for latest reviews, news and video, and of course leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. There are extra points this week if you can name the film, so put them in the comments section if you've realised what the film is, and it's called Two Different Things in Two Different Places. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.